happy to continue having on another show.
Oh,
That's
we'll have those conversations later on.
Yep.
all right. Good. I'll put this up line in a second. Good morning. I'm Steven Rabinowitz. He's Jay Kaplan. That is Anthony Strait. And with eight coaching openings still around, we are here to join the coaching search. If Jason Garrett can interview with the Titans, hell, we can too. And hell, even Anthony will make sure you don't even need a kicker on your roster because he's never going for an extra point or a field goal.
Can I tell you, Rabbi? My brother-in-law asked me if I'm going to throw my hat in the ring for the Steelers coaching job, and my response to him was, "It'll depend on what their quarterback situation looks like."
I mean, you're not if you're a defensive guy, you definitely have a shot at it.
Indeed.
But welcome to the divisional round edition of On the Sports Lines. Football comes in many varieties: the professional variety, the divisional round preview; the college variety, the national championship; and the standard variety, as we'll have final words tonight on Mike Tomlin. That's all on the menu. Variety is the spice of life. So give us a variety of likers and subscribers. YouTube.com/, on the sports lines and Facebook.com/, on the sports lines. Variety is the spice of life and laugh, in my opinion. So work it out how you may.
Was wondering where you were going with all that.
However, we start locally at the New York Giants, who are this close, more language than money, by the way, to the 24th head coach in their franchise's history in the form of former Ravens head coach John Harbaugh. The 63-year-old who was this close by a week to being the longest tenured coach in the league was fired after 18 seasons in Baltimore on January 6th. If he is hired, he will bring over a total of 193 wins and 124 losses to MetLife Stadium. Also, a Super Bowl 13 years ago and a record 8 road playoff victories for the younger Harbaugh. Jay, your assessment on the most likely next captain of the big blue ship. Although don't mention the big blue, but don't mention the Giants and ship in the same sentence. Not really the greatest idea in the world.
Copy that. Guys, if you had told me back in September that the two longest tenured and two of the more successful head coaches in NFL history would both be gone from their respective teams come January, I'd have thought you were nuts. Well, here we are in the middle of January 2026, and both John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin are no longer the head coaches of the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tomlin will not be on the sideline anywhere come September, and I'll weigh in on his legacy later in the show. As for his longtime nemesis and chief competitor for ownership of the AFC North, well, now that after 18 years he's trading Ravens purple for Giants blue, I guess not only do I have to cover him even more, I have to root for him even more as well. All Ravens hatred and kidding aside, this was pretty much always going to be where Harbaugh landed the moment he and Steve Bisciotti parted ways in Baltimore. I mean, after all, according to Ian O'Connor in his piece in The Athletic, Harbaugh used the word "we" when asked about the Giants in a phone call with O'Connor only 2 days after he was fired. Harbaugh didn't catch himself or correct himself, saying, quote, "I think we can win games next year with this roster and the playmakers coming back." And he followed that up by saying later in the conversation, quote, "This is the job for me." Look, the Giants have screwed up every coaching hire since they showed Tom Kaplan the door in 2015 after 12 years and 2 Super Bowl wins at the helm. This time, they may have finally gotten it right. Harbaugh gets two things that are very important to him: a quarterback he can work with. There are some similarities between Jackson Dart, with whom he met on his visit to the Giants facility, and Lamar Jackson. He also gets a solid, stable, supportive ownership in the Mara and Tisch families. Plus, according to sources, he'll also have a similar type of coach GM situation with Joe Schoen as the one he had in Baltimore for years, first with Ozzie Newsome, then with Eric DeCosta. Schoen was actually the driving force behind the push to get Harbaugh, calling both him and his agent multiple times within the first couple of hours after dismissal and in the days that followed. Harbaugh said he watched tape of Dart and came away excited about the future of the Giants rookie quarterback. He also had at least one longtime scout watch film and review the Giants roster to see if there was a chance that this 4-13 team could be fixed in a reasonably short period of time. And Harbaugh came away feeling that it could, telling people that he didn't believe a total rebuild was required. That with the returning playmakers like wide receiver Malik Nabers and running back Cam Scatterby, the Giants could be a winning team in 2026. Harbaugh will hold everyone in that locker room accountable. So something a lot of the veterans on the team believe is sorely needed after the way Brian Dable did not do so. It helps when you already have, as Rabbi said, a Super Bowl win on your resume along with 180 regular season wins. He only had one season with less than 8 wins and only 5 with less than 9. He also has six AFC North titles, 10 playoff trips where he won an NFL best, 8 playoff games on the road, and that Super Bowl win after the 2012 season. He's 33-18 over the last 3 seasons. The team he's about to take over, 13-38. As for having to compete in a very competitive NFC East against the Eagles, Cowboys, and Commanders, well, after 18 years in the AFC North battling the Steelers, Bengals, and yes, the Browns, it doesn't scare him. To paraphrase the Tomlinism, he does not care. What he does care about is building a solid team culture and bringing in coordinators who can make their units successful. Todd Monken, his OC in Baltimore, is a good bet to follow him to East Rutherford. Who he taps as defensive coordinator will bear watching, though I highly doubt a Wink Martindale reunion is in the cards. Either way, the Giants got the head coach they wanted, and John Harbaugh got the job he wanted. Now all they have to do is win games.
And sign on the dotted line
Yeah.
but again, this would be the most interesting non-signing since Carlos Correa with the Mets, if everything falls through.
Oh,
That's the one I'm thinking of.
Wow. Why you gotta hurt Anthony like that, Rabbi?
I'm not hurting Anthony like that. It's literally the only thing I can compare it to. Anthony, with that being said, since a lot of people have talked about the Harbaugh Giants coming together, it's pretty much a win-win situation. I know I'm digging you a little bit, but congrats on Bo Bichette, though, so we can at least get to that part of it.
Yeah, they should kill my fandom. Time of death 11:09 a.m. on this Saturday morning. No, and number two, Yahoo reported that the negotiations is going in the right direction. So it's just a matter of when he signs the dotted line at this point. You realize since Tom Coughlin resigned at the 2015 season, the Giants, including intern head coaches, have had 6 different head coaches in that time. Tom Coughlin was with the Giants for 11 years, and before then, Jim Foster for 5. So clearly, this is a great hire for the Giants for a number of reasons. Number one, it seems like the Giants just can't get it right. It just could not get it right at the time Coughlin left. You had Ben McAdoo. They was so quick to give Ben McAdoo the coaching job because they didn't want him as the red hot coordinator going to Philadelphia at the time to take that job. And you think about everything that's went wrong with this team. They made the playoffs, and then the boat trip happened, and then they got blown away in Green Bay. Ben McAdoo benches Eli Manning, and so his consecutive streak is snapped for Geno Smith, of all people. You had Dave Gettleman draft Saquon Barkley, only to watch the Giants see him walk to Philadelphia for free agency and win a Super Bowl. They signed Odell Beckham to a long-term deal. They trade him the very next season. They draft Daniel Jones. They screw him up, give him an extension after one playoff win, and then that turns a disaster, and they cut him. Like, this team has just been so bad the last several years that it's almost become comical in some cases of just how bad the Giants have been. And John Harbaugh, obviously, with his resume of being able to turn the team around and win, and obviously coming from the AFC North, like Jay said, going to another division, a tough division where you got 3 other teams who could be just as hit or miss any given year, just the AFC North has been. It's not gonna scare him one bit. The thing is too is with Harbaugh, he does have some pieces to work with, and it's just a matter of putting everything together. The Giants has not had, never mind success as far as coaching hires. I don't think they have an identity right now. I just don't know. Like, the Giants just don't know as an organization what they want to be or where they want to head. With the Ravens, you knew exactly what you was getting, even when they didn't have great seasons. You knew you were going to get a physical smash mouth team who was going to make things physical, muck things up, and maybe you can walk away from that game unscathed. With the Giants, you just didn't know from one season to the next if they wanted to be a pass first team, a run first, run on defense team. It just seems like between the different changes of the head coaches, the philosophies kept changing too. It just never stuck. And with the general manager, Joe Shane is definitely on the hot seat more than anything because it's like, hey, yeah, you are the one who going to the grocery store and and bringing all these ingredients together. You're the one that more than anybody that just have to make these things work just as much as the head coach has to work. And the thing was with Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, because of the success in Buffalo, that was supposed to be a perfect marriage for the Giants. But clearly, we saw neither side work is entirely. The Saquon issue, the Saquon Barkley leaving for free agent was a total disaster. Played on a national television because of Hard Knocks. Then you think about the draft picks too. Every Neal has been bad. Kadarius Toney won a Super Bowl just because he was on the Chiefs, not because he did anything specifically throughout that season. He had a couple of big plays in the Super Bowl, so I give him that. Kenny Galloway was a bad contract. There was so many miscues and errors that the Giants from top to bottom did in the last several years. And it made Giant, you know what it did was? It made Giant fans who was upset with Tom Coughlin toward the lighter years when the Giants were still competitive, but not quite the Super Bowl teams you saw, or even the teams that won the division, like in 2008, for example, that was good to get to the playoffs. It made Giant fans appreciate not what just Tom Coughlin what he did with the two Super Bowls, but the culture and accountability he brought to the organization as well. And that was something that's been missing the last several years. And John Harbaugh, that's the one thing I think more than anything you hope he brings to the locker room. Holding guys accountable more than anything, because it did seem like for a while guys kind of skated by without being called out, without being pulled to the side in a team meeting. And Jay, you and I have been in team meetings before. Nothing is more embarrassing than getting called out on film for something you didn't do or
Yep.
did incorrectly. And
Yep.
I think I think for the younger players, but also the veterans too, they need to get back to that. I mean,
Yeah.
and just holding each other accountable. And that is, like I said, it's a cultural thing. It's not just always about X's and O's. And with John Harbaugh, you're hoping when he steps in, I don't know if they're going to have immediate success. I think that's something that Giant fans have to be patient with, but they want to see progress. I
Yeah,
know I'm
there's
rambling
not
on
a
a little
lot of
bit. It's the
patience. No,
progress that
there's
they,
to be
yeah.
fair, there's not a lot of patience that's needed in the NFL considering what the parity has been this year. And you gave me a great opening to kind of go into. And I'm going to talk about this in a couple of spots today, but the fact that the Giants will have a different schedule next year, we don't know how that's going to be. But there are so many opportunities to make quick adjustments really quickly. And even though 2022 for Brian Daboll might have possibly been the worst thing for his entire career, making the playoffs as a 9-7-1
Yes.
team. It turns out that maybe this starting point will be good for Hall. By the way, since that boat trip that we mentioned, the infamous boat trip in 2016, 44, 104, and 1
Oh,
since that. It's insane. Okay, so a couple of things. I'm going to start with Harbaugh for a second, really quickly. I think obviously, by the way, the older Harbaugh by a year
yes.
to Jim. I forgot about that for a second. So he's 63, he's 60. The other one is 62. But I think Harbaugh just has that discipline that I think you haven't seen in the Giants locker room quite some times. Now the Ravens might have been a little more tired of it this year, which after a bad year might fall on deaf ears sometimes, and because of injuries, because of a lot of inconsistencies. That's why Harbaugh was shown the door. Harbaugh, by the way, according to Dan Duggan on the Giants beat writer, senior beat writer for The Athletic this morning, he said one of the bigger things that are going in is Harbaugh did not report to the GM in Baltimore. He reported straight to the owner, Bisciotti,
Hmm.
and that's not the way the Giants do
No.
things. So that's going to be something to look out for. But Harbaugh's success and Harbaugh being such a big personality that has really grown from his time as being a rookie head coach in 2009 to get in 2008 to getting to where he is now is something that's going to be very interesting to see. Now, I want to talk about the coordinators for a second because I think that's just as big as the Harbaugh hire itself. The defensive coordinator is most likely going to be Anthony Weaver. Not the only name that's been discussed, but he's been the leader and fourth in defense this year with Miami. Uh, different type of defense. He has a lot of experience out there. He gets some identity and toughness to the unit. Dolphins have never been that good at defense in over 20 years. So it's something that can help Harbaugh's implementation of the defense. I think the Munkin hire would be the home run hire
Yeah,
here
without a doubt.
because of being in top 10 in total yards 4 times, top 10 in points 3 times, first 2 years in Baltimore, second in points per game and yards per play in 23 and 24. The most important thing I want to see, though, is, and something that Harbaugh really lost this year, especially in key games, specifically the game in New England and the playoff and the game that was essentially for the North in week 18. Just use your voice more in the backfield. Know what Derrick Henry is doing, because Derrick Henry was
Yeah.
playing like the best running back in football at the end of the season. So, but I think Giants wanted one experience with this hire, and if everything goes through, you're not getting more experience out there than John Harbaugh, who really kind of fell into their lap. This is kind of the best case scenario on this coaching cycle for the Giants if everything finishes up and works out.
Yeah.
The,
By the
the
way, I
thing,
throw this in too.
go
This
ahead.
is deja vu for John Harbaugh. Remember, he took over for Brian Billick after a 3-13 season, and immediately got the Ravens to the AFC Championship game in year one. In this case, he's taking over a Giant team that was just bad. But the one caveat is, in both cases, the Ravens and Giants defense the previous year blew several games late because of defensive meltdowns. In one case, he was taking over a Ravens defense. The strength was the linebackers because you have Ray Lewis and Terrell Suggs still on the team. In this case, the Giants' strength is a defensive line and all those pass rushers. So depending on the coordinator, it's going to be very interesting to see how he implement the defensive line and able to get those pass rushers out and to let them do what they want to do. Because this season we saw those defensive, you didn't see the Giants blitz a whole lot. And I'm just thinking, you have these pass rushers, you're not using them or letting them go after the quarterback. Why do? What's the point of having one on the team in the first place?
Oh, you know what? It's a good point, but here's another thing that I'm going to be looking to keep an eye on, and that's you go back to the accountability thing that I talked about. Abdul Carter has all the talent in the world. Okay, there's no doubt about his skill set, his athletic ability. Um, Getting that kid to be to learn how to be a professional is going to be a big thing both for Harbaugh as the culture and tone setter for the org for that locker room. Some of it will also fall on Anthony Weaver if he does come aboard as DC. But that's kind of where it starts because how often did we see after Dable left and Kafka took over that Kafka had to discipline publicly because it was the discipline was him not starting or being confined to the bench for however long due to a transgression off the field in terms of like missing a meeting or being late or whatever. Being able to get kids like him in line and be a professional in terms of how you handle your business, inside the building as well as on the field is going to be a big step for him. The other thing is, and kind of there are people who it's kind of been bandied about in Baltimore, is that his relationship with Lamar Jackson soured to a certain extent this year, and there are rumors that Monken and Jackson butted heads because Monken is a very fiery guy. I think that the stuff that may have caused an issue between those three guys in Baltimore will not be as much of an issue with Jackson Dart here. Jackson Dart's going to be able to match Monken's energy level. There's no doubt about that. I don't know that anybody
Yeah.
has an energy level as high as Jackson Dart, right? And I think I think Jackson's energy and his zest for, the way he wants to play the game, I think will invigorate Harbaugh. Lamar Jackson, as talented as he is, and there's no doubt about it, he's an MVP. He comes off a bit aloof and a bit, reserved. It doesn't seem like Lamar enjoys himself as much as Jackson Dart does. But that might be unfair as it doesn't seem like anybody enjoys playing football as much as Jackson does. So it'll be interesting to see if that's the trio that's in that room together, how that change of scenery for Monken and Harbaugh and getting to work with a guy as energetic and as upbeat as Jackson Dart plays and helps in terms of both his development and their ability to turn that offense around.
You
Oh,
know,
it's a real class.
honestly,
Yeah, I'm
it's going to be
sorry.
fun to see. That's fine. And by the way, I can tell you one person that has more fun than Jackson Dart. His
Yes,
running back. His
yes.
running
I was
back
about to
Yeah,
bring him
probably
up.
yeah,
has the most fun.
that's fair. That's
That's
fair.
But it's going to be very interesting to see. All right, we'll get back to the NFL in a second, but I got that sweet NIL money in the mail, so college's national championship is
You mean
first.
they didn't make you give it back after you changed, if after you went into the portal, Rabbi?
Nope, not at all. No one would have guessed that the national championship would have no SEC teams in it. Actually, just kidding. It's been a 3-year drought. Everyone can trust that after that. And I'm an SEC apologist, so whatever. The national championship features the undefeated one-seed Indiana Hoosiers looking for college football's first ever modern day 16-0 team versus the 10 seed Miami Hurricanes, just barely getting into the dance to begin with. And now they're the first ever team playing at home in the national championship era, that being from 1998 to now. Let's look at both sides. Offensive player to watch, it's not the quarterback. Defensive player to watch, and X Factor. Jay, let's start with the Indiana Hoosiers, who have beaten their two playoff opponents, Oregon and Alabama, by the slim margin of 94-25.
Yeah.
So many weapons, especially with the offensive player to watch, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's wide receiver Elijah Surratt, and I'll get to him in a minute because you can't not talk at least a little bit about quarterback Fernando Mendoza. He is the Heisman Trophy winner after all. Not to mention a Miami native who grew up rooting for the Canes, and he's also the nation's leader in touchdown passes and passer rating. A stat that Rabbi laid on me earlier this week. He has 8 touchdown passes, no interceptions, and just 5 incompletions in 2 playoff games. He had 5 games this season with more touchdown passes than incompletions. No other college quarterback in the past 25 years has had a game like that more than twice. He's a big reason why the Hoosiers have been so dominant so far in the CFP, as Rabbi said. Beat Alabama and Oregon by a combined 69 points, 94-25. No other team in playoff history has won 2 games by more than 55 total points. In those 2 games, Mendoza, 31 of 36. That's 86.1% completion, 369 yards, 10.3 per attempt, and a passer rating of, this is not a mistake, 245 flat. That's 61.3 points higher than his regular season passer rating of 183.7. And as the presumptive number 1 overall pick in the upcoming NFL draft, all eyes will be on him to be sure. But back to Surratt. Any one of the Hoosiers' trio of wide receivers would make sense for this assignment. I initially was leaning towards Charlie Becker, as he's had some serious highlight reel catches down the stretch in the regular season. 24 catches, 509 yards, 21.2 average, and 3 TDs in the final 7 games. And he's continued to be a huge downfield threat in the postseason, averaging almost 25 yards per catch. But Surratt is at least co-wide receiver 1 with Omar Cooper Jr. for a reason. Surratt was one of a whole host of James Madison transfers who followed Curt Cignetti to Bloomington last year. 5 of them are regular starters. And with Curtis Rourke throwing to him last season, Surratt led the team with 53 catches for 957 yards. It's an 18.1 average and 8 touchdowns. With Mendoza throwing to him this year, and even with the emergence of Cooper and Becker reducing his target share, he still had a great season. Second on the team behind Cooper in catches, 62 yards, 802 for a 12.9 average. But he led the team with 15 touchdown catches, and he did all that while playing 2 games less than both Cooper and Becker. Led by Surratt, who has 11 catches on 12 targets for 115 yards, 10.5 average, and 3 TDs in 2 CFP games. This group of wide receivers might be the most underrated part of the Hoosiers offense, according to one Big Ten linebacker coach. But they're a big reason why the Hoosiers are number 1 in third down conversion rate, 58.2, up more than 10 points from last year when they ranked number 13. How Surratt and the rest of the wide receivers do against the Canes secondary, led by nickelback Keontae Scott, 13 tackles for losses, 5 sacks, and returned both of his interceptions for pick sixes, will be a matchup to watch, according to an ACC analyst who believes that Indiana is better at wide receiver than Miami is at cornerback, even when the Canes secondary is healthy. which they haven't been of late. They've had to start 7 different DBs in 3 college CFP games due to injuries and shuffling. Here's one more thing to watch for with Surratt and the Hoosier receivers: their ability to make contested catches. 25% of IU's pass attempts this season have been contested per Sports Info Solutions, which ranks 62nd in the nation. On average, teams complete about 31% of contested passes, but Indiana's completion percentage on contested passes this year is a ridiculous 44%, tops in the nation. In 3 postseason games, including the Big Ten title game, Mendoza is 8 of 14, 57.1% on contested passes for 197 yards. That's 14.1 yards per attempt and 2 touchdowns. That is just nuts. Both Surratt and Becker caught a pair of contested passes against Oregon. 2 came against the Blitz. 1 went for a touchdown. As previously noted, Miami's secondary has been injured and frequently shuffled of late. So if they can't prevent the Hoosiers from making contested catches, let alone stop Surratt and company on IU's usual pitch and catch plays, it's going to be a long night for the Hurricanes.
Anthony would appreciate, by the way, Surratt's nickname is Waffle House because he's always
Yeah.
Why is it Waffle House? Tell me.
Because he's always open and he has been the best security blanket this year for
Amen.
Fernando
It's perfect.
Mendoza. Not something I came up with. This is
that is absolutely perfect.
It's really good. All right, Anthony. When you start a game with a pick 6, your defense is lethal too. That's how they started the national championships, the national semifinal against Oregon. Give me a player to watch on Indiana's just as lethal defense.
Yeah, linebacker Aiden Fish is the guy I'm going to be looking at in this game. He was on the field for all 50 defensive snaps. Hold Alabama's offense to just 193 total yards. He played. He was involved with the Ty Simpson fumble that was recovered. He walked away with a sack and a fumble in that semifinal game. 2-time All-American last year and this season. The key matchup is going to be Indiana's defense stopping Miami's running game. Mark Fletcher Jr. has run for close to 400 yards in 2 playoff games, which tells you just how significant stopping Miami's run game is going to be. But one of the things is, besides containing the run, they want to force Carson back into beating them and taking those long and third and long situations, and being able to neutralize the yards after the catch. Now, containing the run is not going to be just with Fisher, but guys like Valandra Hardy, the defensive end, and that front 7, being able to slow down the running game. With Carson Beck, they want him to throw the ball more anyway, but yards have to catch. And you think about the receivers like Malachi Tony, Keelan Marion, and Spain being able to tackle and being able to bring guys down. One of the most overlooked things in this national championship game is how undersized Indiana's front 4 is compared to Miami's offensive line. So Indiana is going to have to use the speed and quickness on defense to really slow down Miami's offense. That is really very run dominant. We saw this in the first 2 playoff games that Carson Beck has had his ups and downs with throwing the ball downfield. And that's something that Indiana wants to do. Besides the offense being able to put up points, they want to put the Hurricanes in a position where Beck is going to have to throw the ball a lot, which also may neutralize the running game's effectiveness as a whole. Yeah, running games are fine, but when you fall behind 2-3 touchdowns, suddenly you start thinking you may have to throw the ball a little bit more if you want to get back in this game. And Fisher's going to be a big part of that on top of the rest of the defense.
Another one of the JMU transfers, by the way, to be a big part of this team this year.
You know what? James Madison really gets some good players. They just can't keep them.
Yep.
This is not a good thing.
School, they couldn't keep Signetti, so you're going to lose the players. It's because you lose the coaches to big time schools. The players will usually follow them. And for Indiana, I think they're very happy that James Madison exists because they've really made a big part to this team this year, who could end up being one of the best teams, by the way, in college football history if they can seal the deal on Monday. Now, Jay kind of left me with the X factor here because the last one of the big three on that Indiana wide receiver set is Omar Cooper Jr., who actually leads the team this year with 64 catches for 866 yards and 13 touchdowns, which also ranks for third in the nation and second on his own team. Now, a full strength Cooper is capable of making plays all throughout the season. His numbers aren't great, by the way. The numbers are just kind of like there. His biggest game was against Indiana State, where he went 10 for 207. The only game where he went for 100 yards was against Michigan State, 8 for 115. But he makes the plays when he needs to. And obviously, the biggest game of the season for them, or the biggest play of the season for him, was the toe tapping catch against Penn State with 36 seconds remaining that made this team still undefeated. He was just getting both of his feet in bounds. It was crazy doing all of that. Now, he got injured in the first quarter of the Big Ten championship game, hobbling off after a downfield pass from Fernando Mendoza. Went back into the injury tent twice, working on him. He's been okay in this postseason. He had 3 catches for 45 yards against Alabama, 3 for 17 against Oregon, but he got into the end zone once in each of those games. In fact, he gets into the end zone a lot. He's gotten into the end zone outside of the Indiana game. He's gotten to the end zone in every game he's played since October. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The last 6 games he's been in, he's gotten into the end zone. That's where you want to look for him. He is a big boy at 201 for a wide receiver, but just 6 feet. But he has all the ability to score when needed. And Omar Cooper Jr., who all he does is catch big passes, by the way. His average reception this year is 13 and a half yards per reception. That's huge. And I think overall, when we see Omar Cooper Jr. in this national championship game, he's going to be going for a score most likely the first time that we see him. This is an Indiana pick your poison team. No 5-star recruits on this ball club, which is rare for any ball club in this day and age.
Deserve.
Oh, yeah. And 6 4-star recruits on the roster. And Omar Cooper Jr. is one of those 6. This Indiana team, like I said, has a chance to be about as dominant as the 2019-20 LSU team, which had a lot of people go pro. But this team just physically can dominate you on both sides of the ball. On the other side of the ball, we have the Miami Hurricanes looking for their first title in 24 years, playing 20 miles from home. A combined 65-44 score, not as impressive, but whatever, against Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and the Hoosiers' Big Ten running buddies in the Ohio State Buckeyes. Jay, you're first for offensive player to watch. Many choices here.
Yeah. I'm going with running back Mark Fletcher. But, I got to start by talking a little bit about Carson Beck because you can't not talk a little bit about him because as I discussed on our CFP first round preview, which version of Beck shows up, and Anthony alluded to that in the last segment, would play a big part in how far Miami would go. And his big game experience has very much come through for the Canes so far. His CFP numbers, 67.5% completion, 169.7 yards passing per game, 6.1 per attempt, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick, 132.5 pass rating, and the game-winning rushing touchdown against Ole Miss. Now, the Canes, however, would like to get a little bit more out of him in the downfield passing game. Just 1 of 7 on throws of 15-plus yards in the Fiesta Bowl win in the CFP semifinals, with the one being a second-quarter 52-yard touchdown to Keelan Marion. Then again, Beck's biggest play in the CFP might have not happened with either his arms or his legs, but with his brain and that experience he brings to the Canes offense. 3 minutes and 50 seconds to go in the first round win over Texas A&M on first down of what would be the game-winning drive. Beck saw an Aggie safety creeping towards the line of scrimmage. Flashed a quick gesture to Marion, bringing him from the left side of the formation to the right. That change put Marion in position to block the safety and allowed running back Mark Fletcher to cut up into the hole where the safety might have been. Without the adjustment, maybe Fletcher gets 5 or 6 yards and stops there. Because of it, Fletcher went for 56 yards to sell out Malachi Toney's game-winning score. Yeah, maybe an old quarterback and football nerd like me can appreciate that, but Canes offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson did say, quote, "To me, that's as good as throwing an 80-yard touchdown," end quote. Who knows? Plays like that from their veteran quarterback could be the difference against a team as good as Indiana. But let's get back to Fletcher. Mario Cristobal is an old offensive lineman from back in the Canes' glory days, so it's no surprise that as head coach, he leans run first, and that starts with Fletcher. The 6'3", 230-pound junior who rushed for 1,080 yards on 199 carries, it's a 5.4 average and 10 touchdowns, while chipping in with 16 catches for 132 yards, 8.3 per catch, and 2 scores as a receiver, despite missing 2 games in November, has really shined in the CFP. 172 yards rushing on 17 carries, 10.1 a pop in the first round win over Texas A&M. 19 carries, 90 yards, 4.7 a pop on the ground, and 2 catches for 25, 12.5 per catch, and a touchdown in the air in the quarterfinals win over Ohio State. 133 yards rushing on 22 carries, 6 yards a pop in the semifinals win over Ole Miss. That's a total of 395 yards rushing on 58 carries, 6.3 per carry. Throw in those 25 yards receiving, and you have the player with the most yards from scrimmage in this year's CFP with 420. That's over 100 yards more than the player with the second most. Fletcher fits perfectly with what Cristobal is looking to do with the ground game. He's a physical runner who will just not go down and has the speed to generate a ton of explosive plays. 15 of 10-plus yards highlighted by the aforementioned 56-yarder against A&M, largely due to his increase in yards after contact, which has gone from a solid 3.2 yards per carry after contact mark in the regular season to an outstanding 4.2 mark in the CFP. He's the primary reason that the Canes, who will rank only number 72 in rushing at 154.6 yards per game and 4.2 yards per carry in the regular season, have averaged 173 yards per game and 4.5 yards per carry in 3 playoff games. The thing is, the Canes will be facing a Hoosiers defense that is number 2 in rushing defense in the nation, allowing just 75 yards per game on just 2.9 yards per carry, and have allowed only 2 opponents to top 100 rushing yards in a game against them this season. They're also number 2 in the nation in run stuff rate. 29.1% of opponents' rushes gain 0 or less yards, and that doesn't include sacks, which is considered a rushing attempt in college football. In 3 postseason games, including the Big Ten title game, Indiana has allowed their opponents just 58 yards rushing on just 2.5 yards per carry. If Fletcher can continue to run like he has so far, and the Miami O-line holds up enough to avoid negative plays and create manageable third down situations for Carson Beck, the Canes converted 7 of 14 against Ohio State and 11 of 19 against Ole Miss, then the Canes should be able to win the time of possession battle. They were 5th nationally in the regular season, 33 minutes, 42 seconds. They've increased that to 37 minutes, 21 seconds in the last 2 CFP games, which should allow them to keep the high-powered Hoosiers offense off the field. If they can do that, then they'll have a better than puncher's chance against the best team in the nation.
Let's see. It's kind of funny how that home field advantage is going to work, because Indiana really just made the Chick-fil-A Stadium look like pretty much the Hoosier Dome in their own game. So I'm curious to see what'll happen on Monday when it comes to crowd. Even if it's like 60-40, then that's going to be a huge advantage for Indiana. Of course, 60-40 Miami, because I can't see Indiana being able to get more than 40% of that. By the way, that stadium. By the way, Fletcher's already number 8 in rushing yards in Miami and number 9 in touchdowns, and he's coming back for his senior season, so he might be breaking some records there by the time everything is done. Anthony, talking about the defense for Miami, they're going to need to come up big. Give me a player to watch.
Oh yeah. First off, I heard from Mike Irvin, if you want national championship ticket,
Yeah.
Don't call him. Don't text him. Don't email him.
No.
Look, this is a perfect case scenario if you're the Miami Hurricanes. You're gonna play for a national championship at home. The only thing missing from this is the original Orange Bowl. I mean, you could not ask for a perfect case scenario, but you also probably have to beat the team that may be perfect up top to bottom. And for the Miami Hurricanes defense, Ruben Bain Jr. is someone I'm going to be looking at. He was such a big focus of Ole Miss game plans that he didn't do a whole lot for us a stat sheet. He did have 5 pressures, which actually didn't lead the team. And he's part of a pass rush that recorded 54 sacks and 92.5 Pro Football Focus team pass rushing grade. which is a major reason why the Hurricanes defense is such a success this season. Between Ruben Bain and the other defensive lineman, Akeem Mesdor, they're gonna be called on a lot to slow down Indiana offense that could just pick a final score on a given Saturday, on this case, in a college football playoff. They're they're gonna have to slow down the run. That's pretty obvious. But it's the defensive scheme is gonna be important too because they play a 4-2-5 defensive scheme. Keep everything in front of you. One of the most important things is they're gonna have to limit the big plays downfield. They're gonna have to get after Fernando Mendoza. Mendoza receive with the Hoosiers. They do run a very rhythm, timing based offense. Whenever you do that as a defense, you want to rush the quarterback. You want to at least speed his internal clock up, knock him off his spot as much as possible. You're gonna have to definitely surely tackle in space because of Indiana's bedlam of weapons on offense, not just the running backs, but the receivers as well. But it's going to be just winning key one-on-one matchups. And we've seen, and Ruben Bain is a guy who is very much capable of winning those one-on-one matchups. He had 8.5 sacks for during the season, an interception, and a forced fumble, along with 46 tackles for the year. He's going to have to win his one-on-one matchups. Mesdor is going to have to win his one-on-one matchups. They're going to It's going to be a case of bend but don't break. And we did see Miami give up big plays to Ole Miss, but do just enough. I don't think enough is going to help against Indiana's offense. They're going to have to be more than that. Case in point, think Giants 2007 Super Bowl against the Patriots that just could score at will. That's the kind of pass rush you're going to need against this team because you're going to need to literally disrupt everything as far as timing, as far as running routes, just as far as any little detail you can possibly have to slow down the Hoosiers offensively and give your offense a chance to hang around and be in this game. It's going to be a case of let's just take away the big plays, make them if they have to, they can dunk their way downfield to get points if needed. But for Ruben Bain, he's got to look, 5 pressures is good, but they're going to need him to get into the backfield, be destructive with the running game, get to Carlson back at the very least, make him get out of pocket, make him get rid of it quickly. And that's going to be a lot of days. Defensive coordinator Corey Heatherman has got his he worked with Coach Cinetti. So that's going to be a key thing too. So there's some familiarity with Indiana's offense that he may have that could help the Miami Hurricanes defensively. But yeah, we've seen all the weapons that they have. Miami's defense is going to have the work cut off for them, and they've had 10 days to prepare. So let's see how it works out Monday night.
I really call Indiana the chameleon of college football because any way they want to win, they can win. But I don't think it's going to be 10-3 on
No, not even close.
Saturday, Monday, like the Texas A&M game was back on December 20th. Okay. So Jacoby Thomas is my X factor to watch here on defense, and he's been a beast in this postseason. 21 tackles, 1 interception, and has really been just a constant for a defense that has just needed every single hit. And if you're looking for the big hits, you get Thomas. He triggers downhill with the force and physical click and close ability, has one of the most aggressive mindsets out there, and can be used as a blitzer and box safety. And he is a 5th-year senior. He is a threat, and he is a former 3-star recruit and 3-star transfer. He's played at Middle Tennessee State. Didn't have such a great year in Tennessee last year, but has really improved his stock for the next level in his final collegiate season in Miami. Career highs for tackles for loss, sacks, forced fumbles, and recovered fumbles. And again, defensive MVP of the Fiesta Bowl, 5 tackles, just constantly in the secondary. And it's hard to make Mendoza make mistakes. But if anybody can do that, that's the guy. 9 tackles in round 1 against Texas A&M, 7 tackles, and really the final blow with that game-clinching interception against Ohio State. If Miami is to win this game and go on to win their first national championship in 24 years, They're going to need, again, a Giants-like game from Super Bowl 42 to play this game. We're not being, it seems like bias, but it's completely 100% the truth. You're talking about a team who has the pedigree of Miami, being a over touchdown underdog, essentially playing a home game, although they'll be wearing road colors on Monday because they're the lower ranked team. It's going to be very fun to see this Miami team. You haven't ever seen a Miami team with a give no F's attitude
Uh,
like this in a while. And I'm very curious to see if that's going to be a good thing for them or if that's going to work against them from the jump. Should be a very interesting national championship game and a different
I,
one.
yeah. I know what. I think if you're a Miami fan, you kind of like the don't give a F attitude. The best teams has had don't give a F attitudes in their history.
yeah.
So, oh yeah, you definitely love the throwback.
Well, we'll see what happens in the college game. However, the NIL money has run out, so let's go to the pros and talk about the divisional round, which saw 4 games decided in the final 3 minutes, and 2 games that reminded me that defense still exists in the NFL, as the Elite Eight in the NFL is about to become the Final Four in just 36 hours. We're going to have playoff matchups. We're going to talk about the X factors. We're going to talk about what each team needs to win. Let's start with the American Football Conference, which has a lot of defense and one Allen outlier of the whole deal. We'll start with what is and will be the only playoff rematch from last year in the 2025 playoffs between the 6th seed Buffalo Bills as they visit the top seed Denver Broncos. In the 31-7 shellacking last year, where the Bills came out on top, Denver Broncos QB Bo Nix went 13 of 22 for 144 yards. I think that can't happen again when they play today, Jay, but who knows? This Denver Broncos team has a voodoo that we haven't seen in a team in a long while. Jay, give me what to watch for both teams in this game.
You are correct on that, and I will dive into that when I get to the Broncos, but I'm going to start with the Bills. I mean, look, on paper, this is a matchup of the closest thing the NFL has to a one-man band against one of two teams with a championship-level defense and an inconsistent offense. So for the Bills, what to watch for? The overarching headline here is how Superman attacks the Denver defense and who steps up to help him. Look, we know the NFL is a quarterback-driven league. And no one personifies that more than the one-man wrecking crew. That is the reigning MVP, Josh Allen. And he's always going to be atop any what to watch for segment we do involving the Buffalo Bills, and this one is no exception. He did what we expected and then some in Buffalo's win over Jacksonville last week, 28 of 35, 80% completion. For 273 yards, 7.8 per attempt, 1 touchdown, no picks, passer rating of 108.7, along with 33 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns, including the game winner with 1:04 remaining. And Allen did that by doing what he excelled at during the regular season, utilizing the Bills' quick passing game to produce both chain-moving and explosive plays. As a refresher for those who know and a primer for those who don't regularly tune in, the NFL defines quick passes as short, fast throws designed to get the ball out rapidly, often within 2.5 seconds, using simple 3-step routes like slants, hitches, or screens to create easy completions, exploit defensive coverages, defeat the blitz, or help a weak offensive line defeat pressure. It relies on the receiver's legs to create yards after catch, yak, rather than the quarterback's arm to create air yards on deep, longer developing pass routes. It's become a common part of most teams' passing schemes, and the Bills quarterback was among the best at it in the NFL. 12 touchdowns against just 1 pick, 0.25 EPA per dropback, 50.5% success rate, and a 115.2 passer rating on quick passes. Allen took that part of his game up a notch against the Jaguars, completing 16 of 17 quick pass attempts, including 9 of 12 when under duress as the Jags pressured him on 36.8% of his dropbacks. He reduced 173 yards, 10.2 yards per attempt, a touchdown, no picks, a 128.7 passer rating. His number one pass catcher, wide receiver Khalil Shakir, had 60 of his 82 receiving yards after the catch against the Jags. Look, Jacksonville's defense is no joke. Number 3 in EPA per play, total EPA, and number 6 in defensive success rate, and they're especially tough against the run, allowing an NFL low 85.6 yards per game and less than 4 yards per carry. but the one Allen will face in the Mile High City is operating at a whole different level. So yeah, he'll very likely be putting on Superman's cape once again. But if the Bills are going to win another road playoff game, he's going to need some help. And with all the injuries in that wide receiver room, it's not likely coming from there. So that means the help, as it should, falls on the NFL's leading rusher, running back James Cook, who rushed for 1,621 yards, averaged 5.2 yards per carry. And aside from the season finale where he had 2 carries for 15 yards, he averaged 100.4 yards rushing per game. The problem is that guy is not the one who showed up in Duval County. The one who did was held to just 46 yards on 15 carries, 3.1 yards per carry. Though to be fair, running against the Jags was always going to be a challenge. He will need that leading rusher. That guy will need to show up in Denver. Cook's ability and skill set, both as a runner and as a receiver, is why Buffalo led the NFL in rushing offense, averaging 159.6 yards per game on 5 flat yards per carry and 30 rushing touchdowns. It allows the Bills to be less Allen-centric, play at a more comfortable pace. As Allen is really the only other player on the roster who registers significant carries, Cook needs to be the Cook we saw against Denver in the wildcard round last postseason, where he rushed for 123 yards on 23 carries, 5.2 yards a carry, and a touchdown. That won't be easy, as Denver is almost as good against the run as Jacksonville, and the adding of linebacker Dre Greenlaw and safety Talanoa Hufanga made them much better than they were last season. But a good thing for Allen and the Bills is that if Denver's top-flight defense, whose pass rush led the NFL with 68 sacks, has the highest sack rate, 10.3%, and the second highest pressure rate, 30.5% per Pro Football Reference, has a chink in its armor, it's the quick passing game, where they rank 17th in NFL Pro's defensive efficiency. So, if Allen can get the ball out in 2.5 seconds or less, and by doing so keep Denver's pass rush at bay and giving his receivers a chance to create some yards after catch, the NFL's leading rusher version of James Cook shows up. They get a couple of big plays to tight end Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. The Broncos allowed 17 explosive plays to tight ends and have the worst success rate on targets to tight ends. And that all adds up to them getting 7s instead of 3s against the NFL's number 1 red zone defense. Denver only allows touchdowns at a 42.6% rate. The Bills will have a solid chance to advance to their second consecutive AFC title game. Now, as for the top-seeded Denver Broncos, what to watch for? Simple question. Can the offense provide enough support to a championship-level defense? The Broncos are in a similar situation as the Houston Texans, another team with a championship-level defense that needs just a wee bit of support from their offense in order to make a Super Bowl run. Unlike Houston, on paper, Denver has a respectable offense, ranking 10th in EPA per play and total yards per game. But other than that, they, again, like the Texans, are the epitome of middle of the pack, which is a bit of a head scratcher for a Sean Payton offense if you think about it. You'd think the Broncos would have done better on the offensive side of the ball when you consider that their schedule had just 6 games against playoff qualifying opponents, including 2 of their losses, and yet they played 13 one-score games. They went 11-2, but had just a plus 90 point differential. For comparison, the Patriots, plus 170, the Bills, plus 116, and even the Texans were better at plus 109. The Broncos topped the NFL average of 23 points in a game 7 times, going 6-1, but they also had 9 games where they scored less than that. They somehow managed to go 7-2, including 4-0 when they scored less than 20. They never know whether they're getting the Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde version of their offense, led by their wild card of a quarterback. And the reason I call Bo Nix a wild card is because his performance can fluctuate not just game to game, but quarter to quarter. He can look downright pedestrian or even awful for a half or even the first 3 quarters of a game, and to put up clutch play after clutch play to pull victory from the jaws of defeat. One of the crazier stats this season exemplifies that is that Nix led the NFL with 612 passing attempts, despite ranking 29th among qualified quarterbacks with an 87.8 passer rating and 27th in success rate at 43.9. Here's another set of opposite ends of the spectrum stats for the Broncos. They're bottom 7 in the NFL in passes between the numbers that traveled 5 or more air yards. Conversely, they're top 7 in the NFL in passes that traveled 5 or more air yards outside the numbers. The one-on-one matchups outside the numbers between the Broncos wide receivers and the Bills defensive backs will be telling. Besides Knicks, another thing to watch for Denver's offense is their running game. They have struggled with that since leading rusher J.K. Dobbins went down with a Lisfranc injury in Week 10. He was leading the team with 772 yards rushing, 77.2 a game, on 153 carries, 5 yards a pop, and the team was averaging 128.6 yards per game, which would have ranked 7th had it held up for the entire season. After his injury, rookie R.J. Harvey took over as RB1, but struggled, averaging just 46.6 yards per game and 3 yards per carry, while the team averaged just 104.6 yards per game, which would have ranked 26th over a full season. Harvey also had the second lowest explosive run rate in the NFL among running backs with at least 100 carries this season, according to Next Gen Stats. Yet, despite the severe drop in rushing yards per game in the week of losing Dobbins, the Broncos were still third in the NFL in red zone touchdowns on the ground, scoring 22.2% of the time on their carries inside the 20. This resulted in the NFL's 14th ranked scoring offense, middle of the pack, ranking 5th in red zone rushing efficiency per NFL Pro. This should bode well going up against a Bills run defense that is 28th in rushing yards per game allowed, 136.2, 30th in yards per carry allowed, 5.1, tied for last in rushing TDs allowed, 24, 31st in EPA per rush, and are bottom 10 in allowing explosive runs, as evidenced by them allowing Jacksonville to rush for 154 yards on 23 carries. That's a 6.7 average against Buffalo in the wildcard round. Look, as much as the Broncos need to have success running the football so as not to have to put the game in Knicks' hands, if they have to, they'll need their quarterback, who has an NFL best 7-game winning drives this season, victory from the jaws of defeat, to continue what's been the best stretch of football of his young pro career. Since Denver's Week 12 bye, Knicks has completed 67.1% of his passes, averaged 251.7 yards per game passing, 6.7 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns against 3 picks, and a 90.8 passer rating. His 1.3 interception rate and 4.4 sack rate in that 5-1 stretch are due in no small part to one of the NFL's best offensive lines protecting him. Now, Knicks should have plenty of time to throw against a Bills secondary that, despite being number 1 in the NFL, they allow just 156.9 yards per game and the fewest yards after catch by a defense since 2017. It's because their pass rush doesn't generate a lot of sacks, 20th in sack rate despite being 11th in pressure rate. And Nick should be able to make plays with his legs against the Bills defense that has allowed the most yards per carry, 6.7, to quarterbacks this season. Bottom line, no matter how Sean Payton puts Denver's offensive game plan together, he'll need a better than average performance from the Bo Nix-led unit if they're going to be the kryptonite to Josh Allen's Superman.
So that run actually began right before the bye with a really good performance against Kansas City.
True.
Which where he outplayed a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, who was still kind of with all his facilities there. Last 2 games that they played against Kansas City and Los Angeles, the Chargers, both were minimal efforts, but in situations that were not as big. But it'll be very interesting to see what Bo Nix can prove today, because I do feel like he has regressed a tiny bit from season 1 to season 2 in consistency. And that doesn't go to a team who has either won every game in every game they've either won or lost with a last second field goal, except a loss against Jacksonville by 14. So
yeah,
interesting how it moves around that.
Right. And we all know that Kansas City rode a similar 1-score game, scenario in terms of their ability to win those. What they do, 15 last year, but they eventually it's something that is eventually you're going to come to a bump in the road where you're not going to be able to do that. And living on that thin of a wire's edge every week is not sustainable. It's just a question of at what point does the wire snap?
Okay, so I'm going to give my X factors for each game after the analysis to not have to do 4 at one time. So let's start with this game coming here. So on the Denver side, Patrick Surtain is the reigning defensive player of the year and is someone who is really hard to even get a pass towards.
Yeah.
But this is the X factor segment, so I'm going to be talking about the guy who's going to be on the other side of the ball in Riley Moss. It's a very interesting unit by the fact that there's no real consistency in the number two cornerback. It's a feast and famine type situation, and Riley Moss is probably the most frequently target cornerbacks this entire season. His results have been mixed. He's been targeted 105 times this year and has a career high with 17 passes broken up, most penalty yards of any player in the game this season with 13.53 per game. He is an interesting player. His interceptions, he only has one this season. Has, again, the 19 passes defended. He has made a lot of tackles. He's made 80, 57 solo, 23 assisted. And this is going to be the key, I think, because Buffalo, no matter who is out there, they'll run with Cook, but they will throw just as much as they're going to run. And if you're going to do the typical F it, I'm going to get called for a penalty sooner or later, that's what you do. You target the young guys. And the Broncos do have alternative options, in especially in Chris Abrams' strain, if they see that Moss is struggling. But penalties are fine sometimes if you're just preventing touchdowns. But he could also be caught out of position and missing tackles. Patrick Surtain is going to be like the Great Wall of China. You're going to look at it, you're going to marvel at it, but eventually you're going to want to get away from it sooner or later because there's no real use of looking at it all of the time. Do that and see how everything goes on the other side of the playing field. On the other side, mention the fact that you're going to need wide receivers to throw to. Brandon Cooks is one of them. It's a depleted position. There are only 3 healthy wide receivers on this team in Cooks, Khalil Shakir, and Keon Coleman, who has been in and out of the Bills' doghouse many a time this year. After Gabe Davis and Tyrell Shavers got injured. Yes, Gabe Davis is back on Buffalo. I didn't even realize that until he got injured last week. And Joshua Palmer is also on injured reserve. But he knows it's not an ideal situation, but you have a veteran in there in Cooks. He really he got traded from New Orleans. He got left New Orleans, got released by New Orleans, acquired by Buffalo. Played his first game against Pittsburgh on September 30th. Has only caught passes in 3 of the 6 games he's played, but 2 of them are big. 4 catches for 101 yards against Philadelphia in a game where nobody could score. That was in week 17. And then in the playoff game, 3 receptions, 58 yards, big play late in that game. In fact, trailing by 4, 1st and 10, Buffalo 44. Cooks ran up the left sideline, cut towards the middle, found space, and made a 36-yard catch just right before the 2-minute warning. And that's the play where Allen scored on the late run. Been huge for this team this year in many a situation late. Spent 3 seasons with Houston and cut on November 19th, signed with Buffalo 6 days later, and really has a level to an offense that at times they couldn't have this year. And again, Cooks has all the experience. He has been to 2 Super Bowls, was in one in 2017 with New England, and a year later with the Rams. If he can do all of that in this game, I think that Buffalo can win very simply. But there's still a lot of holes in this Buffalo offense, and Cook and Cooks could be the 2 keys. Too many Cooks on this Buffalo team, but that could be the way for this team to get back to the AFC Championship.
Yep. It's going to be interesting because the Bills, you would think that, I mean, the Bills would prefer to have a fully fleshed out wide receiver room. They have 3 healthy wide receivers coming to this game, and I believe Curtis Samuel was a full participant in practice this week. And when that was reported, apparently the Bills Mafia, basically gave that news a standing ovation. That's kind of the situation with their wide receiver room. So yeah, I agree, Rabbi. He's going to have to step up, and I also think, as I referenced, both their tight ends are going to have to step up as well.
Bringing from his injured reserve this week, him and Ed Oliver as well to be playing in this game. Okay, The other half of the AFC bracket features the 2 seed New England Patriots hosting the 5 seed Houston Texans. They're about to play a defensive game of poker. New England had a card of 3 points and 207 yards with 5 sacks in their win against the Chargers. And Houston raises them with 6 points, 175 yards allowed, 4 sacks, and unfortunately for Jay, 2 TDs by the defense. I'm sorry, not the offense. The offense did nothing in that game. Anthony, give me what to watch for with the Pats and the Texans, the usual Texans ESPN early afternoon special on Sunday.
Yeah, they got a reprieve in the wild card round, and the lead schedule maker say, nope, we're gonna push you back exactly where you belong. Early Saturday afternoon, the very
Sunday
first
afternoon.
game.
Sunday afternoon. It's
Sunday
not the very
afternoon.
first game. It's
It's
Sunday
Sunday.
afternoon, but it's still the 3 o'clock
Yeah, it's still that.
ESPN game.
It's the
Houston has
3 o'clock.
been involved in all of 3 ESPN's divisional round games, by the way. I just
You know
realized
what?
that today.
You know what? The Texans should be called the brunch special every time they pop up in the postseason moving forward. But
Yep.
yeah, look, the Texans, the speed of that defense, I think caught me by surprise. We haven't watched a lot of, at least me, I haven't watched a lot of Houston Texas games if they weren't on national television. The last weekend against the Steelers, just to see their speed and how they're able to just swarm to ball handlers and just get after it, it just kind of caught me by surprise. But it shouldn't surprise anybody who's watched this team all season. They were first in total defense, only give up 277.2 total yards a game. Second in scoring defense, only allowed 17 and a half points per game. But against the Steelers in the wild card round, they held them just 175 total yards at 6 points and the two defensive touchdowns that pretty much put the game away and got CJ Stroud off the hook, who is like the walking example of getting an A on a science project and doing absolutely nothing in the process.
Big
But
time.
yeah, you look at the talent on this team. Will Anderson Jr., Daniel Hunter is combined for 27 sacks in the regular season. Derek Stingley Jr., Kamari Lassiter, Jalen Petrie, Kalen Bullock in the defensive backfield. That team is loaded. What D'Amico Ryans has done, and Matt Burke, the defensive coordinator, with this was a passive aggressive defense. I mean, they're a team that can get after the pass rush, get out of the quarterback without having to send extra defenders. So not only you're dealing with pass rushers with the front four, sometimes five, you're dealing with a secondary that's just loaded with guys in the passes lanes, and there's really not too many areas to throw the ball to. It's not like, look, Aaron Rodgers, I know his pass is prime, but I think even I understand he didn't have a whole lot to throw the ball to just because there weren't many guys open. So he had to hold the ball longer than he wanted, and you saw him taking those extra hits and getting dinged around a bit. They played a very disciplined zone coverage scheme. It's a mix between like the cover three that we see the Seahawks has done in the past, quarterbacks when they have extra defensive backs. But it's all worked out. But one of the more important things is they've been able to force turnovers. And that's going to bring me to my point with Drake May, who was the Patriots what to watch for that I have. By the way, Drake May is playing the team. He got his first NFL start just a year ago, back on October 13th. In that game, he threw for 243 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, got sacked 4 times, and a 41-21 loss to the Houston Texans. Now, Mike, what I'm looking at with Drake May is what is he taking away from his first playoff experience? Because the Chargers had an equally good defense, obviously, going into that game, and he really struggled in that first half making adjustments. The second half played a heck of a lot better. 11 of 14, 173 yards, and that dime of a touchdown pass that somehow got past a couple of the Chargers defenders into the end zone to Hunter Henry. So and also it was a much better performance than the almost less than 40% completion percentage he had in the first half of that game. But what he's going to have to do is because he's going up against another team that can rush the quarterback but play a little more zone in the back end, is probably get more into a quick passing game, get more into a rhythm, than looking for shots downfield, looking for the big play. But the biggest key is going to be Drake May's mobility, being able to use his ability to run, use his legs. Got to take care of the football too, stay ahead of the chains, get the at the very least pick up some yards on first and second down, make third down a little more manageable in a lot of cases, and also the big plays may not get there and may not be there right away, but kind of pick and choose the spots when he wants to take those shots downfield. So it's a simple playbook, especially for Drake May, because you're going up against a defense that don't give up a lot of big plays and take the ball away. You're gonna have to just pick your poison as far as being able to attack this defense, get downfield. You may have to. I mean, the Patriots. We think back to the earlier Tom Brady Super Bowl teams where they didn't have the most elite receivers, but they would dink and dunk their way downfield and get points. Drake may have to take that mentality right in this game because with that pass rush, he's not going to have a lot of time to wait and wait for guys to get open 10, 15, 20 yards downfield. So it's going to be a totally different game plan for whatever he was going, whatever the Patriots were going into in the first half of that game against the Chargers last week, compared to this week, where you may have to get the ball in hand a little more faster, and to avoid him getting hit and getting sacked, dinged around, but also avoid him making a lot of mistakes that's going to give the Texans offense a short field.
Does May want to be a runner too? Because last week, I think we saw one of his best games running. That was a good team to do it against in the Chargers. I'm not sure you want to do anything against the Texans other than get the ball out of your hands and hopefully make sure it goes to your team. But Drake May is a very fearless type quarterback that we've seen this year grow into that position.
Yeah, well, that's going to be a key thing too. I mean, you got the Chargers. They're very much with the pressure, but they play a little more man on the back end. The Texans play more zone. There's more eyes in the backfield that you want if you're going to be a scrambling quarterback. So, like I said, he's going to have to really pick and choose when to take his shots downfield, but also when he has to scramble. I know it's somewhat out of a necessity, but if you can incorporate that into the game plan and have to make the Texans be a little more honest with a scrambling quarterback, that may open up some more one-on-one matchups downfield.
All right, so moving on to the X factors. The Patriots, we're going to start with the running game. And it's a history of the Belichick-McDaniels era, and it's continued here. Their running game is as inconsistent and mind-boggling as any teams in the NFL, but in a good way, because they always have a good mix of running backs. But TreVeyon Henderson, I think, is probably one of the best running backs they've had in years. He had the most rushing yards per attempt in 5.1 in the NFL, most rushing touchdowns, 9, second most against rookies, by the way. Most rushing yards per attempt for the rookies, 5.1, most rushing touchdowns by a rookie, 9, and most scrimmage yards among rookies with 1,132 this season. And he didn't really get his first big game until a game against Cleveland on October 26th. And so Henderson, by the way, is the first person, TreVeyon Henderson, joining Saquon Barkley and Pro Hall of Famer Lenny Moore as the only rookies in the NFL history with 4 rushing touchdowns at 50 or more yards. But in the wild card game, his running mate, Ramondre Stevenson, went for 128 scrimmage yards and a 48-yard catch and run. And while Stevenson is probably the best backfield option out as the best catching option out there, Henderson's made more plays throughout the year. And so it's kind of a competition, but it's not really a competition that I think is true, because Henderson has legitimate talent. 5.1 year carry, 180 attempts, had games against Tampa this year with 147 yards and 2 TDs, Buffalo game, 148 yards and 2 TDs, and Stevenson being a little bit older than Henderson. Stevenson's 27. Henderson, who played in the national championship game last year with Ohio State, is 4 years younger. He actually also has a very good pass block rating, had a 75.6 pass blocking rating in week 18, 77.6 from PFF in the wild card game. He is someone who I think I want to see play more now than not. But Josh McDaniels, great offensive coordinator, shit head coach, has a pattern with rookie running backs, doesn't trust them early, limits their exposure and pass protection, and kind of rose them during the season. Henderson is still not a great receiving back, but he's better. And it's funny because in games where Stevenson was injured or eased entirely, he had 6 targets in week 1 receiving, 5 in week 9, 6 in week 11, but didn't really do anything in terms of 2 total targets in 4 games from week 16 to the wild card game. And if you're against Houston, you want to make sure you put the fear, not the fear, but the allowance of not knowing if they're going to pass or run. And I think the best running attack on that team is TreVeyon Henderson, and they need to go to him more, especially in this game in particular. But it may not matter because Houston's defense is all worldly, and I think their X factor could be anybody on there, but I'm going to pick Jalen Pitre. I will say this as an opinion. I don't think I've seen a better game-changing defense than the 2000 Baltimore Ravens, and this team reminds me a lot of the 2000 Baltimore Ravens and game changers just for their entire career. They have studs all around the place. Houston allowed 183.5 passing yards per game, 8th fewest in the NFL, 17.4 yards per game, 2nd fewest, Seattle the least, 19 interceptions, that's tied for 3rd, and Pitre matched his backmate Derek Stingley with 4 picks this year while nearly doubling his tackle totals. And that team has a lot of boys on this team, but Pitre carried the disruptive profile straight into the league. 2nd round 2022 NFL draft, linebacker for his defensive back awareness, thrives in traffic, and is constantly arriving in the ball with just bad intentions. And saw that a lot in the Steelers game, which was just a mess for Aaron Rodgers, and it's definitely one that you probably just makes you say, I think I'll go back and just do ayahuasca for the rest of my natural life. Rodgers, 146 passing yards, and then obviously the 2 backbreaking turnovers in the 4th quarter, pick 6 and scoop and score. Petre's impact went beyond the box score, though. Range, downhill aggression, instincts consistently into race space, and was insane in that game. 7 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, really just disrupting everywhere. Had 74 total tackles, 12 passes defended, and 4 interceptions, missing 3 games due to a concussion. And Jalen Pitre is one of the only players in the NFL who has the balls to wear the Guardian cap. And that's something that can help him out in the future. He's one of, I think, maybe the only player left in these playoffs of note. Buffalo safety Taylor Rapp and Los Angeles Rams offensive lineman Kevin Dotson are 2 more. But he wears a Guardian cap, so it allows him to be more comfortable with playing in the defensive backfield. And for Houston, we see it with D'Amico Ryans and his San Francisco background leading that defense. We're seeing it with Robert Saleh again, and we'll talk about him in a second when we talk about the San Francisco defense. But this team has dogs all around it, and I'm very interested to see what the rest of this run could mean for the Texans. If they can win and get to their first ever AFC championship, this truly will be a special, special bunch.
Indeed.
Next up, it's the NFC, and you better have West Coast bias or pray to the altar of Ditka for this segment, or you might not be interested. Let's start with the battle on what will be a sleepless Saturday night in Seattle between the top seed Seattle Seahawks hosting the 6th seed San Francisco 49ers. These two have a win apiece in their playoff history. Seattle against sorry-ass Crabtree in 2013-2014 in the NFC Championship, and San Fran in 2022-23 in the NFC wildcard. They also have a win in their piece they also have a win apiece in their recent 2025 history. Niners winning week 1 on the road 17-13, Seahawks winning week 18 on the road 13-3, and God, I hate the week 1-18 combination with a passion, NFL. Don't ever do that. All of that being said, Anthony, with all of that backdrop, give me what to watch for each of these 2 West Coast rivals.
Well, for the 49ers, what to watch for? Do they have any healthy bodies left? I mean, geez. I understand the term next man up, but man,
they're running out of men to be the next man up.
This is an absolute walking mash unit, which is like, you know what, a UN show, we raved about the job Kyle Shanahan has done with this team. I don't think we can rave about him enough because
No.
who's left? I mean, just last week they lost George Kittle for a torn Achilles, which, by the way, he may not play at all next season as a result of that too, because Achilles injury is normally 8 to 10 months recovery. That's before they even clear for any contact whatsoever. This is a list of injuries they've had to key players. Brock Purdy missed multiple games with a toe injury. They lost Nick Bosa earlier in the season with a torn ACL. Fred Warner has been out of the lineup. Brandon Ayuk has been out of the lineup. Mikael Williams has been out of the lineup. Overall, financially, they have lost $95 million in salary this season due to injuries,
Ouch.
which is the most in the National Football League. And yeah, they're the most decimated team in the NFL, and yet they won their 40th playoff game last week as a franchise, which is actually the most in the NFL, and are now 7-2 all time in a wild card round of playoffs. Now, as far as speculation and injuries, this is just me from a pro perspective. I'm not a scientist. No, I do not dig a power plant. It's the reason why these injuries are happening. I don't know if you heard the theories and the rumors being passed around about the 49ers training facility being too close to a plant, and maybe the radioactivity or whatever the hell is going on might be a factor into the injuries. Or maybe it's just a sheer case of dumb luck. I would think that would be more if that's the case than the former. But yeah, it's been the next man up mentality. I mean, we saw it in the fourth quarter. Jawan Jennings on a trick play, and a play Jay I know as a former quarterback. You appreciate because of the throw. Maybe not so much of the guy who's throwing it because it's a wide receiver. You generally tell them if it's not done, don't you dare release that football whatsoever. But
No.
it was a perfect pass that Chris McCaffrey was able to make a good over the shoulder catch for a touchdown. Given the 49ers a lead, they would not relinquish. And also, look at the defensive end. Garrett Wallow led the team with 11 tackles. Eric Kendricks, 10 tackles, and got the pass breakup on a fourth down desperation throw to Dallas Goedert in the final minute that secured the win. But again, I mean, the offensive side, DeMarcus Robinson, 111 receiving yards, 6 catches, and Jennings had the touchdown throw, but also 45 yards receiving. So again, the 49ers, you wonder, is this the week that all the injuries are going to finally catch up? I mean, there's only so many band-aids you can put on something before you realize, yeah, this is not salvageable no matter how hard we try.
Yeah.
Now, they wish they could get the rest. The Seahawks are the team, the number one seed, that are coming off the first round bye, and you wonder if it came at a bad time. I mean, they were on a 7-game winning streak, and normally when you're on a winning streak, you're rolling. The last thing you probably want is a stoppage of play or a pause of any kind. And yeah, when you get the injuries, you get the rest and everything. But we've seen this time and time again with teams in playoffs that has gotten that first round bye, that week off, things aren't exactly as sharp and crisp as possible. It's seen a lot more so on the offense than anything with Sam Darnold. If he's overthrowing his receivers or short, or timing's a little bit off, that might be a bit of rust that, hey, look, you can practice all you want. You can't simulate real life NFL action with the crowds there. The opposing team actually can't hit the quarterback. He's not wearing a red jersey in practice. Basically, as a stop, do not touch sign. But so it's going to be key on the Seahawks defense. I mean, I know that's defense in Seattle, and think back to the Legion of Boom era. That's something that the fans love to hear. They were top in the NFL defensively, and third down conversions, run defense only allowing less than 4 yards to carry. The offensive balance, though, Jackson Smith and Jimbo, who's come off an amazing season, a close 1793 as far as receiving yards. The running game combination, Kenneth Walker the third, I can't pronounce his last name. I was butcher it. I, I don't disrespect. I don't like to butcher names, so I'd rather just kind of skip over it as much as possible. But Sam Darnold, come off a season when he was throwing for over 4,000 yards, and being really the solid leader of this offense. By the way, him and Bo Nix are two quarterbacks coming into this weekend without a playoff win. So that's going to be very. But that's a trivia question that that I saw on ESPN earlier this morning that I just had to throw in to this one. But yeah, it's a classic case of arguments for rest versus rest. Rest, injury recovery, health wise, you still carry a little bit of momentum, but then that's the flip side for the argument for us rest.
Mhm.
Losing momentum. The historical thing I just said. We've seen teams time and time again. They get that week off after rolling through the regular season. And suddenly things aren't as sharp that the offense don't look too great. The defense are not at the spots. And a perfect example is this, and I saw it online. Yesterday was the anniversary of the 2011 Giants going into Green Bay and upsetting the 15-1 Packers. And that was a team that was a perfect example of that. They rolled through the regular season. The offense, well, an offensive juggernaut. The defense, a step down, but still pretty good. And then you saw it throughout that game where Aaron Rodgers was just not sharp. The receivers, the passes was off. Everything was just not there. And that's going to be the biggest concern for the Seahawks. I mean, can you rev it back up after playing high
Mhm.
quality football, but also high quality football with the stakes on the line? Keep them like this. The Rams and the 49ers are both in a division where the Rams were also in the thick of the race for the top seed. So every week was almost a playoff like situation
Yeah.
for these all three teams. And now you have a situation with Seattle. You got the week off. You got to sit back. You have to watch the Rams basically sweat it out against a morning game Carolina Panthers team. And the 49ers find a way, which has been a moniker all season, find a way to win games. And now you get a very less than 100% 49ers team coming into your stadium. But again, you had the week off. Is the timing there? Weather might be a factor this evening. By the way, weather might be a factor in all four games this weekend. And it's going to be a matter of can you rev it up enough to where that third or fourth come around, and you don't want the 49ers already hanging around a close game situation. So it's a lot. The first quarter, maybe the first 10 minutes is going to be very important for Seattle to get things going, get out to an early lead, and take the 49ers out of the momentum as quickly as possible. Because the 49ers is hanging around. We saw with the Eagles, inability to put a wounded team away. You do not want San Francisco hanging around the fourth quarter. And they have not forgotten blowing a one seed just 3 weeks ago with a chance to win it on national television. So I'm quite sure that is in the back of their minds too. So yeah, tonight is gonna be a really fun game to watch, but totally two completely different reasons as far as health.
Well, so let's address the semi-elephant of the room, and that's Sam Darnold with the oblique injury that he suffered on Thursday, non-contact in that game. So two updates on that injury itself from this morning. From the NFL Network, Steve Leish said they said when Darnold sustained this injury, he said it's something that he had never felt before and they were cautious. They basically shut him down when he did it, but they are optimistic. And Darnell himself feels super confident he will be able to get out and play. They'll work him before kickoff, but signs are good. However, this is what Alex Smith said a little while ago about that same injury. And obviously, you're going to know about that because you're a quarterback who Alex Smith has had a lot of history with that. This is basically saying this is not nothing, especially when it is a core injury, rotational movement, the oblique. And again, he's not throwing now. He hurt it throwing. He had it 48 hours. He's going to be not throwing a football 48 hours before a playoff game for a guy who has a lot of going into this. He's never won a playoff game, had a terrible playoff game last year versus the Rams. And if he can't go, or if he has bad signs, the backup quarterback is Drew Lock. And I think that changes a lot of things in that game. Although Drew Lock could win a game himself, Darnold gives that team the best chance to win. I think that's pretty obvious on that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of injuries, I mean, we talk about the 49ers ad nauseum with the loss of Kittle is huge. There's nobody on that team that can do what he can do. What's going to be interesting is A, is Ricky Pearsall going to play? And if so, how limited will he be? Shanahan expects him to go. Pearsall expects to be able to go. But he's still listed as questionable and will likely be a game time decision because it's a knee injury. So we'll see what happens. But if he can go, and he's even close to 100%, that might somewhat mitigate Kittle's loss. The other thing that is interesting to me is a guy we don't talk enough about who is such a Swiss Army knife in Shanahan's scheme is fullback Kyle Juszczyk. Fullback is what he's listed at. He plays all over the offense. How much are they going to increase his usage to also make up for the loss of Kittle?
Yeah, and interestingly enough, you look at Kittle's numbers this year, 628 yards, 7 touchdowns. And yeah, a big loss to have him. But just remember, this team it was pretty okay without him during the season and has played and is planned for playing without him from time to time. He got injured in game one and didn't play again until the 19th of October this year. So with that being said, let's talk about his backup, Jake Tonges, who is going to be a huge factor in this game in my book. Now, he had just one catch on 3 targets last week for 14 yards, but in the games that he didn't, that Kittle missed or left early, Tonges caught 32 passes for 284 yards and 3 touchdowns, had 7 targets a game. If you put that in a full season, that's 78 receptions for 689 yards and 7 touchdowns, which is still may not have the talent that Kittle has.
Pretty Kittle-like, though, if that's that.
It is pretty Kittle-like. Doesn't have the talent that Kittle has, though, but Shanahan has a system. And if you find the end zone, if you can find the end zone against any team, which he actually did to have the game-winning score in week one against Seattle, you can work on this team, and you can really work on this team a lot. But honest to God, in my opinion, this is a Christian McCaffrey game in all likelihood. And I don't think there's any back who changes a team's offense more than McCaffrey, because if he does it all, he can fix a lot of issues on your ball club. But this is going to be a very interesting game because this could be a new injury bowl coming into this game. And speaking of guys who need to step up, I think Rashid Shaheed is a very interesting case on the Seattle Seahawks. It hasn't been the biggest of issues this year. Jackson Smith-Njigba is all world and has led this team and the league in so many categories. Damn Buckeyes. But I will say this.
Offensive player of the year in the NFL, Rabbi?
I don't know. It's really going to be between Smith-Njigba, Nacua, and McCaffrey. But honestly, those three should be in the MVP conversation. But we know what the league is now. It's what quarterback did the best this year, and that's going to be Stafford or May. But I digress. Considering what you see in New Orleans from Shaheed, where he had no less than 4 catches per game in any of his 9 starts in that season, including 4 catches for 42 yards against Seattle earlier this year. He's only had 4 catches a game twice in that span. That was against Atlanta and against Indianapolis. He actually had no real play in the game against the Rams where he was fully healthy, had no catches on 1 target, but have a run for 31 yards. And he is also going to be very important in the special teams game this week. In all together, 14 catches, 186 yards, 8 games this season for the Seahawks. But again, 7 carries also for 64 yards, and returned a punt and a kickoff for a touchdown, including a 100-yard touchdown against the Falcons. For Seahawk, by the way, to have a kick and a punt return TD in a season. Don't know what to expect from Shaheed in this game. If he can provide a complement for what Jackson Smith-Njigba brings, they could win this game very easily because of just what this offense and defense provides itself. However, who the hell knows what this game is expected, because the 49ers can win games out of nowhere, and the Seattle Seahawks really haven't been in this position since Russell Wilson left this team a while ago. They haven't had home field advantage throughout the playoffs in 11 years. Seattle is a team that is very interesting and one to watch for because both the AFC and NFC is wide open. And I think we have, and this is being nice because of the parity, some of the weakest one seeds that we've seen in quite some time. Again, that's not an insult. That's just
Flawed. I
talking
think
about the
it's
parity.
flawed more than weakest, Rabbi.
Yeah,
They're flawed.
fine.
They have more flaws than you would normally associate with a one seed with the records that they've put up.
Yeah, but again, it's going to be interesting. I feel like these teams, I don't know what to expect from Seattle. And honestly, I don't know what to expect from Denver either in their
No,
games later today. Okay.
no. Rabbi, let me tell you something. This is the second postseason matchup this year between division rivals. The Seahawks and the 49ers have big shoes to fill if they're going to try and top the game we got from the Bears and the Packers last week.
Speaking of the Bears, good transition. The other night of the weekend features the 2-seed Chicago Bears hosting the 5-seed Los Angeles Rams. You want to talk about variety in the NFL? Here it is. The Rams and Coach Sean McVay are playing their 15th different team in their last 15 playoff games.
Ah!
That's every team in the NFC except the Commanders and Giants, and then the Bengals in the Super Bowl and the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Sean McVay has never played the same team twice. But
Wow.
the Bears are looking to follow up their first playoff win in 15 years with another one to make their first NFC championship in those same 15 years of time. And via a DM on Sunday, currently the weather in kickoff in Chicago is scheduled to be 15 degrees at 5:30 p.m.
I may have an update
kickoff
for you
time
later in the.
Sunday.
I may have an update for you on that later in this segment, Rabbi.
I literally just said it could be anywhere from 2 to 10 degrees, and I'm not even including the wind chill. But with that backup drop, Jay,
Yep.
give me what you're watching for from the Rams and the
You
Bears.
know, this could be one of the more interesting games in terms of quarterbacks with very different skill sets, leading offenses that rank second and third in the NFL in explosive plays during the regular season. That's running plays of 10 plus yards and passing plays of 20 plus yards. The Bears ranked second with 127. The Rams ranked third with 125. Let's start with the Rams. My what to watch for is Matthew Stafford putting up an MVP for performance in a hostile environment. Look, the Rams are a high-powered, multi-dimensional offense that was number 2 in the NFL in EPA per play. The wide receivers get all the press, and rightfully so. Puka Nacua led the NFL in receptions, 129, second in yards to JSN, 1,715, and was seventh in touchdown catches with 10. His partner in crime, Devontae Adams, led the NFL with 14 touchdown catches and was second to Nacua on the team in both catches with 60 in yards with 789. But the Rams also have one of the best running games in the NFL, ranking number 7 in rushing yards per game at 126.6, number 8 in yards per carry at 4.6, behind Kyren Williams and Blake Corum, who combined for 1,998 yards rushing, 4.9 yards a carry, and 16 touchdowns on the ground. They were also numbers 1 and 2 in the NFL in running back success rate. And that ground game will be buoyed by the return of guard Kevin Dotson and going against a Bears run defense that was 4th worst in the NFL in explosive run rate allowed. But it all starts and ends with Stafford, who finished with an NFL best 4,707 yards passing, 46 passing touchdowns, career high, and a 109.2 passer rating that was second in the NFL to New England's Drake May. Through the first 11 games of the season, no one was playing quarterback better than Matthew Stafford. The Rams were 9-2, averaging 27.8 points per game, topping 35 times. Stafford was completing 66.5% of his passes, averaging 257.3 yards per game, 7.6 per attempt, with 30 touchdowns against just 2 picks, a 113.7 pass rating, a minuscule 0.5% interception rate, and a 4 flat sacks rate. The Rams were arguably the best team in the NFL and the odds-on favorite to be both the NFC's number 1 seed and be the conference's representative in the Super Bowl, and Stafford was the leading candidate for MVP. However, over the final 6 games of the season, the Rams were just 3-3. Yeah, they averaged 35.3 points per game, topping 40 points twice, but they also allowed 30 points or more 3 times. 2 of their 3 losses, 31-28 to Carolina, 27-24 to Atlanta, were to teams that finished that ultimately finished 8-9, and it dropped them to the 5 seed where they are today. Stafford completed 62.5% of his passes during this stretch for 312.8 yards per game, 8.4 yards per attempt, with 16 touchdowns against 6 picks, a passer rating of 101.7. His interception rate was 2.7. His sack rate was 3.6. Still great numbers, even if maybe a touch below MVP level. Look, he may not win regular season MVP due to how both he and May each finished the season, but the postseason is where Stafford has truly performed at an MVP level, especially since coming to LA, using his football IQ and vast array of arm angles to put up 200 plus passing yards and 2 plus TD passes in each of his last 8 playoff games. The only quarterback with a longer streak since 1977 is Aaron Rodgers, who did it 9 times. There are 2 keys for Stafford if the Rams are to beat the Bears. Number 1 is ball security. In 4 of the Rams' 5 losses this season, Stafford turned the ball over at least once, with a total of 6 picks and 2 fumbles lost. The Bears' defense has lived off takeaways, leading the NFL with 33. During the regular season, Chicago went 9-0 when they forced 2 or more turnovers and 2-6 when they forced 1 or less. If the Rams protect the ball, Stafford, who led the NFL with 51% of his pass attempts going to the sticks, and his receivers can expose a Bears defense that ranked 29th in yards per game allowed, 361.8, and yards per play, 6. 27th in rushing yards per game allowed, 134.5, and 22nd in passing yards per game allowed, 227.2. This leads into key number 2, which is Stafford and his receivers taking the top off a Bears secondary that struggled against the deep ball. Stafford led the NFL in touchdown passes, 10 against just 1 interception, and was second in passing yards, 1,018, third in passer rating on deep balls. His 12.2% deep pass attempts were the 6th most in the NFL, and he ranked in the top 10 in both completion percentage and EPA per dropback on deep pass attempts. Overall, the Rams offense was second in deep passing efficiency per NFL Pro, and their 72 pass plays of 20-plus yards led the NFL. The Bears defense was 22nd in deep passing efficiency per NFL Pro. Only the Cowboys allowed more TD passes on deep throws, and only 4 teams allowed a higher completion percentage on deep throws. The Bears allowed 61 pass plays of 20-plus yards. Only the Ravens allowed more. If all of this results in an MVP performance from Stafford at the controls of Sean McVay's air attack, the Rams will be one step closer to being the Super Bowl favorite folks thought they'd be earlier in the season. As for the Bears, and I'm going to freely thank Anthony for giving me this angle, can Caleb Williams and the offense put together a full 60-minute game? Clutch Caleb or cardiac Caleb? Either would be an apt description of the Bears' second-year quarterback, who has definitely shown some growth in his first year in Ben Johnson's offense. Chicago went 3-3 in games where they trailed by 10 or more points in the last 5 minutes of a game this season. The rest of the NFL went 3-151. The latest entry in the cardiac clutch ledger was last week's 31-27 win over the wildcard win over the Packers after trailing 21-3 at the half. The Bears scored 25 points in the fourth quarter against the Packers, 3rd most in playoff history. Williams led the way, throwing for 184 yards and 2 touchdowns in the final 15 minutes, the most yards in the final quarter of a playoff game since Tom Brady threw for 196 as the Patriots came back from down 28-3 against the Falcons in Super Bowl 51. It was Williams' 7th fourth quarter comeback of the season, tied for 3rd most, including playoffs, by any quarterback since 1950, trailing only Kirk Cousins circa 2022 and the aforementioned Matthew Stafford circa 2016. Each of them had 8 fourth quarter comebacks. Yes, the Bears are the Bears are one of the best second half teams in the NFL. But that's because they've struggled so much in the first half, largely due to slow starts, especially on offense. The wildcard game is just the latest example. In the first half, Williams was 2 for 5 with 40 yards and an interception on deep throws, which was a big reason the Bears fell behind. But when Williams righted his deep ball ship in the second half, going 7 for 13 for 166 yards and a TD on passes of 15 or more yards, the Bears were able to complete their latest comeback. The reason this is important for Chicago is down the stretch, the Rams secondary became more susceptible on deep balls, especially off play action. Both things are key pieces of the Bears' passing game overall, but especially when combined, as LA ranked 29th in success rate overall against play action per next-gen stats, and dead last against in-breaking routes off play action, which is a staple of the Bears' passing game. The fact that the Bears can win despite not being able to play a full 60 minutes of consistent offensive football with such a ridiculously wide variance in positive and negative plays at times during any given game is both a blessing and a curse. Again, last week's wildcard game was a perfect example. In the regular season, the Bears had a 48% success rate on design runs. We know that Ben Johnson wants to run the football the way he did in Detroit. They were number 3 in the NFL with that mark. But that mark dropped to 28% against the Packers. Granted, that was largely due to the Packers loading the box an inordinate amount of time. 75% per next gen stats, second highest mark in a game this season by any team. The Rams' highest mark in any game has been 40%, which they did twice. So the Bears' run game should be better this week. I do not see Chris Shula mimicking that 75% heavy box. It's not how he rolls. And despite his captain comeback performance, where he delivered a number of clutch plays, highlighted by an off-balance 27-yard completion to Rome Odunze on 4th and 8, as well as the game-winning touchdown pass to DJ Moore, Williams, per net NFL Next Gen Stats, had a 28% off-target rate and a minus 14 completion percentage over expectation rate. Both of those marks were demonstrably worse than his regular season marks of 21% off target and minus 6.9% completion percentage over expectation. Both of those were at the bottom of the league. Chicago's defense helped its offense by continuing to make stop after stop. But this wide variance on both sides of the ball, as previously noted, the defense is heavily reliant on turnovers, is not a recipe for a Super Bowl run. True, so far the Bears have not been burned by constantly having to come from behind. It helps when your quarterback has been clutch late in games with an NFL best 7 touchdown passes and 128.5 passer rating on third down when the team has trailed in 2025, including the playoffs. But the flip side of that is the Bears' tendency to allow yards and points in bunches, especially early in games. They're 29th in yards per play against, 6, and 23rd in points per game against, 25.4. Playing at home in what will be a hostile environment, weather-wise. I checked the weather.com as we were doing this, Rabbi. It's expected to be 22 degrees with a real feel of 2 degrees and the possibility of snow by the 6:30 p.m. ET kickoff. And going against a Rams defense that went from allowing 16.3 points per game from week 1 through week 12, tops in the NFL, to allowing 28.3 points per game from week 13 onwards, towards the bottom, might make things easier. But as previously noted, going against that high-powered, multidimensional Rams offense will be no picnic even with the weather. Now, if Caleb Williams and the offense can avoid the lulls that tend to put them behind the 8 ball and require their quarterback to be clutch or cardiac, they'll have a better chance of seeing this magical first season under Ben Johnson continue.
And we'll see if they can do a better job of containing the 2024 overall number 1 pick than they did the 2023 overall number 1 pick last week. So with apologies to George Kittle, or in honor of George Kittle, we're going to finish off the X Factors to a bunch of tight ends. It's not National Tight End Day, but maybe it should be again. So taking a look at the Rams, Colby Parkinson is an interesting case. He's had a bunch of good games this year. He's had 9 touchdowns regular and postseason, including 1 on just 2 of his targets this past week against Carolina. He's been consistent this year, 43 catches, 408 yards, but it's the end zone that's huge. 8 touchdowns, including 6, obviously, including postseason, 9 touchdowns, including 6 December and on for Mr. Parkinson. He's been the number 3 guy and number 2 guy when Adams was out a lot at the end of the regular season. He was the number 1 tight end because of Tyler Higbee's absence due to injury. Already hit a career high for receiving touchdowns. Again, a red zone threat, and he has the record for the single season franchise all-time leader in tight end touchdowns. 2 touchdowns in 1 game while Higbee recording another. Only once in history has that happened. It happened in the regular season. Only once in history has that happened. That happened in 2010. When it comes to what Mike LaFleur has said, I've seen him grow as a football player. There was a reason collectively why we were thrilled about grabbing him a year ago out of free agency. By the way, from Seattle, so he is definitely an NFC West slut out there, just from his toughness and some things that he could do in all of the phases of run, pass catching, and pass protection. And he is a ram through and through. Interestingly enough, the offensive coordinator obviously is Mike LaFleur. And if you saw the end of the game where Ben Johnson was very cold to Matt LaFleur, who he basically said, I don't like him in the post-game interviews afterwards. So he said, not apologizing for anything he did. Maybe LaFleur is going to put a little bit of extra sauce on some of his offensive plays this week. But again, it's a divisional round game. You should need no motivation to put any extra sauce on any plays, but it'll be very interesting to see. On to the Bears side, and this is kind of a cheat as an X factor because Colston Loveland has been the Bears' go-to pretty much the late part of the season. And Jay saw it in Michigan, went active last season, 37% of Michigan's targets, and a class high 40% of the air yards on this team.
Yep.
But it took him a little while to get into the groove in Chicago. But when he's gotten into the groove, he's had some big games. His last two regular season games, 94 yards and a touchdown in week 17 against San Francisco, 91 and a touchdown in week 18 against Detroit. He has 6 touchdowns on the year. And again, he's just improved from week to week. And obviously, the piece de resistance was last week's awesome game against Green Bay, where he had 15 targets, catching 8 of them for 137 yards. That is 17.1 yards per reception in that game. And he has just been amazing. He will most likely, with just 41 receiving yards, have the single season record in the postseason for our first year tight end. Sam Laporta did it 2 years ago. And Bears offensive coordinator Declan Doyle said, this is a meteoric rise, but said he is the most dangerous weapon at the playoffs. Biggest thing, he's being a challenge to defend. He just gets better every week because of his temperament. And there's a lot of things that he does well, one being his change of direction and ability to have a big catch radius and be able to get the ball at a clutch moment. The team has been inconsistent all season in wide receivers, which makes it very interesting to see that Caleb Williams just becomes Captain Cardiac Clutch at times. I use both of them, by the way, my nickname. It's when you have DJ Moore's been in and out this whole entire year. Went to Rome Odunze early. He's kind of been a little hurt late. Luther Burden has been a key during this playoff run and during the late part of the season, but the true safety blanket and sometimes big playmaker, especially in the late months of the season, has been Colston Loveland. There's a reason why he was the top tight end picked in this draft at the 10th position. And if Caleb Williams is down 14 or 21 again going into the fourth quarter, you can bet that there's going to be a bunch of plays made by Colston Loveland. And if he does that, the Bears are going to move on to their first NFC championship in 15 years.
I'll tell you this, Rabbi, the Rams are thanking the football gods that Quentin Lake is off the injured list and will be able to go, because if they weren't able to have him on the field, it would put them even further at a disadvantage against Loveland. Lake at least has a chance to potentially mitigate that to a certain extent. We'll see. All right. It's going to be a matchup to watch.
Yep. And finally tonight, we have a resident Steelers fan in the house, and Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin ended his 19th season, 201, 126, and 2 tenure with the team this past Tuesday when he stepped down. A man, by the way, Anthony, who in his last victory against the Ravens pounded his chest in honor of UFC fighter Derek Lewis, the Black Beast out there. Got to be impressed with this press conference and some of his very interesting actions. The man with no losing seasons, 2 AFC titles, and 1 Super Bowl in his repertoire can have many words to be said about him. And Jay might be saying all of them. He is the one man who is able to do it right now in his final rant or praise.
Yeah, like I said at the top of the show, guys, if you had told me back in September that the two longest tenured and two of the more successful head coaches in NFL history would both be gone from their respective teams come January, I would have thought you of nuts. But here we are. Am I totally surprised that Mike Tomlin stepped down after 19 seasons at the helm of the Pittsburgh Steelers? Not totally. Not after one of the more trying seasons of his time in the Burgh. I have always believed, and have said so both on this show and to those who know me, that Tomlin got way too much of the blame when the Steelers lost, especially in the playoffs, or when he didn't do things the way a certain rabid, somewhat entitled segment of the fan base thought he should have. But this season, especially during that stretch from week 7 through week 13, where the team lost 5 out of 7 to go from 4-1 to 6-6, and we're in danger of not only missing the playoffs, but giving Tomlin the first losing season of his career. The overall level of noise, especially the fired Tomlin chants raining down from the stands at home games, reached a level that I'd never seen or heard in all my years, not only as a diehard fan, but in covering the team for this show. It was ridiculous, and in my humble opinion, the fans ought to be ashamed of the way they treated him, as should the legends like James Harrison, Ryan Clark, and even Ben Roethlisberger, who called for Tomlin to move on. This is a coach who somehow managed to win AFC North titles and get the Steelers into the playoffs while oftentimes having a roster that had no viable option at quarterback after Big Ben retired. Y'all remember Duck Hodges? Had problem children causing havoc on or off the field like Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, Deontay Johnson, among others. Had to try and win despite injuries to key players like Ben and TJ Watt and Cameron Hayward, among others. Yeah, sure. He'd lose a game on paper that the Steelers had no business losing. The Browns in week 17 was this year's. But he would also win a game that on paper he had no business winning. At week 16 at Detroit kind of qualifies. Yeah, the Steelers struggled to draft and develop a quarterback after Roethlisberger retired, but it's not that easy to find a franchise quarterback, let alone develop one when you're constantly drafting 18 to 22nd in the first round. And look, as much input as Tomlin had on draft night, it was still the GM, whether it was Kevin Colbert or Omar Khan, pulling the trigger on the pick. Tomlin always found a way to maximize the talent he was given and often got his players to exceed their potential. This season was no different. Like he did many times before, Tomlin rallied the Steelers from that 6-6 spot, winning 4 of their last 5 to clinch the AFC North and qualify for the playoffs. Rabbi alluded to it in his opening. 193 regular season wins, 8 more in the playoffs, 201 total, 2 trips to the Super Bowl, 1 win. He tied legendary Steelers coach Chuck Noll's franchise record for regular season victories, did it in 33 fewer games. He ranks 9th on the NFL's all-time wins list, and his .628 career winning percentage is 26th all-time. Never had a losing season. 3 seasons of 8-8 were as bad as his record got. Only Hall of Famer Tom Landry has a longer streak of non-losing seasons at 21. No other coach has had a longer run of non-losing seasons to begin a head coaching career. Tomlin won 8 AFC North crowns, including this season. He made 13 trips to the playoffs in 19 seasons, including 7 times in his first 10 seasons, going 8-6 with a win in Super Bowl 43. Yeah, I know. He hasn't won a playoff game since 2016, going one and done in his past 6 postseason trips, including this season. And the Steelers' 7-game postseason losing streak is the longest active playoff streak and the 4th longest in playoff history. And I get how that weighs on a fan base, but that's the noise from outside. Inside the building, Tomlin hadn't lost the support of the Rooneys, who were not expecting him to step down, as him stepping down to be the conversation the next day after the loss to Houston in the wildcard round, nor had he lost the support of the players, as evidenced by the number of them who were brought to tears when Tomlin told them he was stepping down. Here's why I call a certain segment of the fan base entitled. Ask any NFL coach or executive, or anyone who has played for or worked with Tomlin for that matter, and they'll tell you that the type of long-term success that Tomlin had just doesn't happen. Even the most successful NFL teams experience a drop-off at some point. Think about how Bill Belichick's career ended in New England with losing seasons in 3 of his final 4 years. Tomlin dragged teams into the playoffs that had no business even being above 500, oftentimes on the force of his will and Tomlinisms like make the routine plays routinely. We want volunteers, not hostages. And my favorite, as evidenced by my t-shirt selection today, the standard is the standard. And yet, I have to wonder, like others have, if Tomlin, contrary to the nice words to Steeler Nation in his goodbye statement, decided that he'd finally had enough of a fan base and a city that no longer seemed to appreciate his ability to do that. Okay, Yinzers, you got your wish. Tomlin is gone. The search begins for just the team's fourth head coach since 1969. I'll end this by grabbing the headline from a story in The Athletic this week by Tony Jones because I echo and agree with it. A warning for Steeler fans after Mike Tomlin's departure. Be careful what you wish for.
You know what?
And,
I'm going to piggyback off of that because I have a good friend from Pittsburgh, Steeler fan, and I told him a month ago because he was one of the many vocal individuals who was calling for Tomlin to be fired or to be replaced. I say, look at the Giants. Prime example of be careful what you wish for. They pushed. We talked about it earlier in the show. They couldn't get Tom Coughlin out the door fast enough. They haven't, and the Giants has been an organizational mess ever since top to
Yep.
bottom. Mike Tomlin, for what it is, and by the way, my mom has a huge crush on him. I'm gonna throw that in. I'm gonna throw that in to mess with her. But yeah, Mike Tomlin, the job that he has done with this organization, following look, he followed Bill Cowher, by the way, which is not exactly easy shoes to fill, because Bill Cowher was just as successful, who had losing seasons, by the way. His last season, the
Mm-hmm.
Steelers missed the playoffs. Just come after winning the Super Bowl the previous season. Um, in the case of Mike Tomlin, it was just not just uh it was the continuity too. He kept many of those the coaches that was on Bill Collins' staff, like Dick LeBeau, from the previous season, kind of that continuity that was so important. And that got the Steelers into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, yes, they did win the Super Bowl, Super Bowl 43. And I respectfully disagree with James Harrison. Tomlin is definitely Hall of Fame worthy. And
Hell
look,
yeah.
and by the way, Debo, great. Look, he scares me as far as his workout regimen, but yeah, if it's not for Tomlin, you don't get a second Super Bowl. I'm just gonna put that out there. But yeah, the guy's been a class act the whole time. Model of consistency. One got the Steelers in the playoffs when they had no business being there. I mean,
Yep.
Kenny Pickett was his quarterback in one playoff game a couple years ago when they had to go out to Buffalo for Pete's
it was
sake.
actually Mason Rudolph, I believe. Pickett
It
got
wasn't
in.
Mason Rudolph. Oh, that's
Yeah, it was
even
Yeah,
Mason
worse.
Rudolph for the game, but Kenny Pickett started most
Pickett
of the
got
game.
Pickett got them there, but Rudolph was the quarterback in that spot.
That's even worse. So that's even he gets more of a compliment for that. But yeah, I mean, you just think about this, and look, the Rooney's always said like the Maras, and that connection there is why I've always respected the Steelers organization and their fan base because yeah, I've been to Giants games where the Steelers were the opponent, and it felt like I was in I still call it Heinz Field before what it's worth, but it felt like it was another Steelers home game. But what Tom has done is, by the way, I have to throw this out there. He was one of the many coaches that he was a great coach, but also he gave Brian Flores an opportunity after everything that happened in
Yep.
Miami,
Mm-hmm.
and added him to the coaching staff. So I think Tomlin deserved to call his own time to leave, and I think
And it was
maybe
always going to be that way,
And
Anthony.
he did.
and I think it
He
was always
was
going to be that way. I
right.
don't
They
know
were the
if,
Roonies were not going to fire
no.
him if that relationship was going to be in. Tomlin was going to walk away on his own terms.
Yeah, and the fact that the Steelers never had a losing season under his tenure speaks volume of how much he got out of the players, even when they didn't have the best roster from each Sunday. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there were times when the Steelers made the playoffs or even was competitive, and they were clearly not a good team on paper whatsoever. Look at the mess he had to deal with Antonio Brown, and Antonio Brown's best seasons was with Mike Tomlin, and that's just more of a testament to Tomlin's patience than just as much as Antonio Brown's unique talent. Like literally, we were 7 years into his career, we were talking about when Antonio Brown was going to be a Hall of Famer because of the stats he was putting up. But You think about it, then he got the most out of Ben Roethlisberger at times when Roethlisberger was banged up, not healthy. Le'Veon Bell, I mean, we think about that too. Like his best seasons came with the Steelers. That defense, even when they got weakened by loss of personnel, was always still in the top 10, top 15 as far as total defense, points per game. There were always something that about the Steelers that traditionally that was still there, and Tomlin was able to kind of keep that thing going. And now, I mean, you said it.
I mean,
The entitled.
Aaron Rodgers came to Pittsburgh for one reason and one reason only. That was to play for Mike Tomlin. That's it.
Yeah,
That tells you. I mean, I don't know what more of that. I don't know if you can have any more of a of something that defines who Mike Tomlin is and how well he's respected around the NFL. Aaron Rodgers, one of the most mercurial personalities in the NFL, who's done things his own way his entire career, came to Pittsburgh and willingly towed the line because that's how much he respected and wanted to play for Mike Tomlin.
and by the way, Mike Thomas part of Tony Dungy coaching tree. He won
Yep.
a Super Bowl as an assistant, Super Bowl 37 when he was with the Buccaneers. One of the few holdovers that John Gruden kept on that coaching staff
Yep.
when he took over. So yeah, I think look, what Mike Thomas as his career speaks for itself. He has done a tremendous job. It's gonna, like I said, be careful what you wish for. It's gonna be really hard to replicate that kind of success and that consistency over time. I mean, you said it, the fourth head coach, and God knows how long. Chuck
Since
Noll was there for
1969.
1969. Chuck Noll was there for so long. Bill Cowher was there for so long.
Yeah,
Tomlin, 19 years.
absolutely.
Now you gotta find a coach in an ever-changing year-by-year league. Well, free agency is more of more of a
And
factor and putting teams together. And now you
and
gotta find
one
a
where
head
you're
coach,
fighting with 8 teams also for
yeah,
other
with 18 with
spots.
other teams in a very tough division. And then you gotta find another head coach that can not just keep this team competitive and put forth a winning team, but to do it year after year after year. That is an incredibly tough thing. I get mad with Yankee fans sometimes. The entire
For
Yankee
the
fans.
same
Okay.
reason.
Yeah.
Rabbi and I get mad at those
For
same
the
Yankee
exact
Yeah.
same
fans.
reason. It's like you have not had a losing season since 1992. Any team
Okay.
would love to have that model consistency. But
All
yeah,
right.
the
Yeah.
moment Mike Tomlin is ready to come back to coach, you don't think his phone is going to be blown off the hook at this point?
He'll have any
We'll
job
see
he
what
wants.
Like,
happens.
he has earned
Yeah.
the way the opportunity to step away on his own terms and even pick and choose what he wants to do for life after coaching, whether he's done with coaching, whether he goes into TV, whether he just takes a year off and like the other night, support his daughter who's a college gymnast
Yep.
and just take life for what it is before he
And
decides maybe he wants to come back into the NFL again. But trust me, when he does, he is
yeah.
going to be
Oh,
numero uno on a
absolutely.
lot of team wishes when it comes to getting a new head coach.
And it's going to be very interesting. By the way, just one final thought to everything and kind of mixing what we talked about 7 hours ago, it seems like, with Jim Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin.
John
Isn't it?
Harbaugh.
And John Harbaugh, sorry, and
We've all
Mike
done it,
Tomlin.
Rabbi.
It was 7 years ago, pretty much, when we talked about this already. How poetic that it ends up on exactly 40 regular season matchups. Tomlin with the 23-17 advantage and 4 playoff matchups where they're tied 2-2. So we might see that again, but we will very likely not see it as divisional rivals going forward. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I'm Stephen Rabinowitz, and no, you cannot see my pictures social media from 10 years ago. Go get them themselves. Go get them yourself, not showing them off. I think you know the drill by now. YouTube.com/On the Sports Lines on demand, Facebook.com/On the Sports Lines live, and in the third spot, Jay with the Twitter plug.
Yep. Our Twitter handle is at ONTH Sports Lines, where you'll find a link to each new show like today's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. This week, I posted a link to a story by David Aldridge of The Athletic, who had a very interesting take on the Lynn Jones-Liam Cohen exchange at Cohen's press conference following the Jaguars' loss to the Bills in the wildcard round. He calls it, quote, a defensive overreaction by many in my industry. And after reading the piece through, I'm inclined to agree. Regardless of your take on the matter, it's a well done piece by one of the best sports columnists in the business and very much worth your time to check out.
We'll be back for Conference Championship Sunday next week. Until then, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the pigskin. Good afternoon from On the Sports Lines.
Good
Afternoon,
afternoon, everyone.
everybody.